Thank you all for coming. I'm super happy to have you. This is a very special webinar. We typically do our community meeting at this time, but we wanted to do something different today to show you a bit about a use case of Kleros that is not that well known, but is one of the actually more popular use cases and the one that brings more actually cases into Kleros, which is certification and curation. So we have a bunch of extremely good speakers that will review different aspects. I'm just going to give you a short introduction about this. So as you know, we are in a world where we are having more and more crypto assets being created every day. This is growing exponentially. And what's happening is that the capacity to like regulate all this grows because technology grows also, but only linearly against this exponential growth of all of these assets that are issued every day. And this creates like a very big fraud risk, right? One of a few weeks ago, Brian Armstrong from Coinbase mentioned this. He was saying that they are receiving they are 1 million tokens every week being created, and there's no way they can review all of these new tokens to be listed at Coinbase or in any other exchange, right? So the thing is that how can we address this problem? And can certification be one of the solutions that we can use to resolve this problem of growing amount of crypto assets against not growing capacities for regulation? Just a very short introduction to Kleros, because there might be people from the audience that don't know it. So Kleros is a dispute resolution protocol. The use case we typically pitch is about Alice and Bob. Alice is an entrepreneur from France, and she hires Bob to make like a website or a video for her. And then, of course, they are in different countries. She's in France, he's in Guatemala. If there was a dispute between them because of the quality of the product, I mean, she wouldn't go to look for a lawyer in Guatemala and go to court. But what if there is a different method? What if she makes a payment, deposit into a smart contract with money for the website, and then they both agree that if there is a dispute, there's going to be Kleros to solve it. If there's no dispute, all is good, everybody's happy. She gets the product, he gets the money. But if there's a dispute, then money stays locked into the smart contract as an escrow, and then this goes to Kleros. Kleros will pick a panel of jurors who are going to study the case, analyze the evidence, the contract, and the product, and then each of them independently is going to vote who is right. Why is Kleros built on blockchain? Well, because you need trustability, that nobody is going to tamper with the evidence, nobody is tamper with the jury selection process, and nobody is going to tamper with the vote counting process, okay? So people vote, and then let's say that Alice wins, and the funds in the smart contract are sent back to her, and this finishes the situation, okay? So very simple explanation of Kleros. And Kleros has lots of different use cases. Some of them are for moderation of social media, disputes in e-commerce, well, for lots of different things, and you can watch lots of videos from us discussing those use cases. But we're going to speak about something that we launched already 6 years ago, which is called Tokens by Kleros. So this is an app we launched by then, and it was an app that was used for betting tokens that were submitted to exchanges for being listed. Okay, so you have people who wanted their token to be listed, and we developed this process to build a community-driven process to decide which tokens comply with the rules to be listed. Okay, so Alice wants her token listed, so she makes a submission with a deposit, and then if nobody objects about the submission because the token complies with the rules, so the token is listed and she gets back the deposit. But what happens if now she sends another token with another deposit, and then Bob thinks that, oh, this is not compliant because this is an impersonation, it's a scam, whatever. So he can make another deposit, and now there's a dispute between the submitter and the challenger. The submitter claims that the token is compliant. Challenger says no. So this goes to a Kleros panel, jurors analyze the evidence, and then they will, in this case, vote that the token does not comply with the rules, so the token is rejected, and the challenger gets the deposit done by the submitter. Okay, this is a very simple crypto economic mechanism to make sure that every token that is accepted into the list will be reviewed by the community following strict rules. Okay, so but then we worked with an exchange called Edfinex that wanted us to make a bit of a more complex logic for decision making. So we built a badge that had a number of conditions that were about how the team behind the project was, I mean, how the technology worked, and a number of other conditions that were required to consider that the token was safe enough to be listed in this Edfinex exchange. Okay, and Kleros was like a filter that would be the first filter when you wanted your token to be listed on Edfinex. You would have to send it to Kleros. Kleros would make this process to make sure that it's not a Ponzi, etc. And then after you pass this filter, then only the team would review the token and make the final decision. Okay, but this was super useful for them because they got every week they had 100 tokens to review. So this process would filter out 95 of those tokens. So they only had to worry about 5. And this was extremely good. It worked extremely well. And we had some very famous cases of the Kleros lore. A very famous case was called Buyer Chain. So Buyer Chain was a token project. They wanted to be listed. They made the submission, and they got challenged. And what happened? So someone claimed that this guy, Scott Bingley, who claimed to be the CTO of the project, something didn't smell well because the guy was apparently the CTO of an important project, but there were no YouTube talks, no papers. I mean, something didn't quite, look good here. So the guy claimed that he was part of a blockchain group at Oxford. So one of the jurors actually called Oxford and asked for Scott Bingley, and people answered from Oxford, look, we have no idea who Scott Bingley is, and there is no such thing as a blockchain group at Oxford. So this was all a scam. This was stock photo. The guy didn't exist, so it was all a scam. 6 months later, so the token got rejected, of course. 6 months later, we read on the news that the Chinese police makes a number of arrests into a project called Buyer Chain, accused of being a Ponzi. And it took the Chinese police 6 months. I mean, how many people got scammed during that time, and how much more safety there would have been in the ecosystem if Kleros was accepted as a certification method to remove that token as soon as was detected by this curation method. Okay, so this is a very practical and real, actually this happened thing about how this process can work. Okay, so this was 2019. This is how we were thinking about this in the very early days. But then we, got more. Crypto gave us more. And what happened? Enter NFTs. And NFTs were a huge place for fraud because there were lots of different things done, in terms of fake NFTs, impersonation, falsification, everything that you can imagine. So people would steal art and virtual art from someone else and put it online, make an NFT and sell it. And this is how lots of people got scammed. There were even lots of people, lots of money, and even Banksy was impersonated. So for people selling works from Banksy, saying they were from Banksy, but they were not. So can we use the same certification for DeFi into NFTs? Of course we can. It was the exact same mechanism we had developed before. You want your NFT to be listed into this OpenSea or NFT marketplace. Okay, make the submission with a deposit. So now it stays visible for the community to see. And people would ask, okay, does this comply with the listing rules? So is this NFT submitted by the author, or this is just someone who stole it? This guy has the right to actually mint and sell the NFT. And if there is no objection, all fine, you get your NFT listed, you get your deposit, all good. And then you get the certification badge that this NFT now is acceptable as like a safe and not scam NFT. Again, you want another NFT listed, but this one is a impersonation, or this is a fake one. Make the deposit, you get challenged by someone, then you go to the jury trial at Kleros, and the panel will decide that your NFT is a scam, so you would lose your deposit and your NFT is removed from the list. Okay, again, the same mechanics that we developed, and then you could end up having a very large list of NFTs that went through the process and then that they got this certification. Okay, if you want to learn more about this, I actually gave a talk at HCC a few years ago. Here's the title, Decentralized Justice Solving Disputes in NFT Marketplaces. That was at the peak of the NFT, craze. So very good talk. I explain how this works, and yeah, go there if you want more. And one more thing. So, real world assets. This is something that we have been exploring for a while. And a few years ago, we made an agreement with the Maker Foundation to fund the research from one person in our fellowship program to research something that was very important in the early days of DAI. So when DAI started, they only had the collateral done with Ether. But of course, over time, they wanted to open and have more asset types as collateral. So they started accepting more crypto assets. But the holy grail was to start accepting real world assets. Imagine if a house or like stocks or bonds or a car or a motorcycle could at some point become an asset, that you could use as a collateral to mint DAI. Okay, this was all of the movement that happened in the context of the multi-collateral DAI, and this is extremely hard to put together because when you have this problem, you have some asset that is going to be a collateral. How do you make sure that that asset, actually exists if it's from the real world? How do you know that this car exists or this house exists? And if it exists, how do you make sure that if this has to be liquidated, it can, because maybe the house exists, but then you go to, to have the eviction with the token. Hey, this token represents a house. Please get this person evicted. And what is the judge going to say? Yeah, sure, no. So you need to verify that every token, every real world asset that is going to have representation on chain actually goes through first a number of verification. That means that real world asset actually can be used as a collateral. So with the Maker Foundation, we did this research. It was like very early stage research, but we decided to build this badge with three main ideas, right? So is this token representing this asset compliant with some code requirement? It's not going to be hacked. So is this compliant with the risk requirements and with some legal requirements in the sense of this, is actually an asset that could be liquidated in case of need, okay? So the way in which we thought this would work, lots of people, imagine everyone would want to have their asset become, a collateral for the DAI. So they will make a submission. Then there will be like a verification instance done by Kleros in the same way as with the DeFi tokens and the NFTs. And then after that, we get to a pool of acceptable assets. And then the Maker Foundation would decide which assets would actually be part of the DAI collateral, okay? Based on their governance process and all that. So if you want to learn more about this, Marvin Cody was after a quite long recruitment process for the right person to do this research. So Marvin is a securities lawyer from Canada, and he did this research. You can actually watch the video where he presents the results and the conclusions in this QR. So this is a super interesting thing to watch. And this was 2020, right? So imagine how early this was in the moment, when we were thinking of all this. So certifications are a very good market approach to self-regulation. This is an entirely private process. This is the industry can self-regulate, deciding which tokens are not scams, which NFTs are not fake, and which real-world assets are acceptable. So this is the approach from which we think about certification. And if we actually can nail this and have the community work on this certification process, we can help a lot in a world of more and more crypto assets being issued every day. We can increase the capacity for regulators. And when I say regulators, I'm not saying only governments, I'm only saying like private regulation, like exchange listing, for example, okay? So we can scale that at the same level as the number of crypto assets that are going to be issued. So all this introduction, so you get a bit of understanding of how this works, how we started, how we think about this, and now we're going to have a few speakers who have also been exploring this way of doing certifications on chain. We have Mike from OpenVino, who is going to speak about certifications in the organic wine industry. Then we will have Denis, who is going to speak of a very similar approach, but in the dairy industry. Also, two people working in food. Then we had Andres, who is from Chile, and he was going to speak about the cybersecurity industry. I don't know if he will make it because of, speaking of cybersecurity, apparently. So there is a big power blackout in Chile. So if he doesn't make it, I mean, we will have him some other day come and do his talk. But yeah, that's another approach to certification. And then we will speak, Fortunato will speak a bit about how we are actually working with this in terms of product, how you can implement this, and yeah, how to start from a very practical perspective. So thank you very much for coming, and I will leave you with our first speaker, who is going to be Mike. Thank you, guys.
OpenVino is a platform I've been working on for almost 8 years. We're focused on tokenization of wine, traceability, which we call vine, wine, dine, mine, going from the wine producer to the end consumer. And today we're focusing on the transparency aspect. I'm in Mendoza, Argentina. I'm a winemaker as well. But this is a ecosystem of some approximately 70,000 wineries worldwide, producing upwards of 30 billion bottles a year. So it's a big deal. And basically our transparency element, which we'll focus on, it was what we're calling biodigital certification. And this is something we've been developing with Kleros over the past 2 years. And now I'll give you some updates on where we are now. We're about to launch some of our first 10 wineries with this next in 3 weeks and on March 15th. So let's talk about the problem. Consumers value authenticity, meaning that more and more, all the products that we're looking at in the world, we're finding lots of stickers and labels and certifications. Is this organic? Is it sustainable? Is it vegan, kosher, these types of things? But also, in the case of wine, it goes a step further because we want to know, is this a Malbec from Mendoza, from Luján de Cuyo? Was it oaked? Was it from this particular producer? Is it single vineyard? There's a whole list of attributes that wineries use to distinguish their product from these other 70,000 wineries, right? Defining where it's actually from. So there's a lot of important things here, and there's a lot of confusion to consumers in actually what these things mean. The current system is that in most cases for certification, a wine producer like myself, I would hire a third-party auditor to come and check my processes and say, if we're taking the example of organic, right? We go through a process and they say if I'm organic or not. The problem is that this system is completely dysfunctional for a few reasons. It costs money for me to certify the wine, and that increases the expense of the wine, and it makes me less competitive, and it doesn't make the wine taste any better, right? And so that's already one impediment from trying to get people to certify for certain things. And we want people to be more sustainable and more ethical and all these other things, so that's a problem. But the biggest problem, I think, is that if I'm hiring a third-party auditor, I'm their customer. So they want to give me a yes. If for whatever reason they're not certifying me, then they're losing me as a customer for next year, right? And they also want to spend as little time as possible in the certification. The certification is quite different from what most people imagine, and that it's usually a paperwork audit, and so it's quite easy to cheat if I want to. And at the end of the day, customers really don't know what this means. They see the label on the back of the bottle, but they don't really know what it means, and they have no way to validate it. So this is basically a very simple way to resolve this. First, we define what does organic mean. This breaks down to some 27 types of rules. These are rules that are already regulated. They differ slightly from different jurisdictions. So the EU and the US and Japan and Argentina might be slightly different, but they're more or less the same. We give the producer a mechanism to report their evidence using IoT sensors, using cameras, using documents, using work logs, using different types of tools that they can store their evidence on an immutable blockchain or using IPFS or some of these tools. And then the last step, the most important one, is the challenger bounty, where basically we'll have the winery block a certain amount of funds with Kleros for, we're looking at a 30-day period and saying, as anyone wants to challenge us, a challenger can also put money into the bounty, upload their reason to explain why I'm cheating, and then this goes to the Kleros court. So very in line with what we've already seen. So let me just show you quickly. This is kind of how the process works. We have biodigital certification, where basically we're explaining what this is, what the different types of certificates are, and this three-step process, and what types of artifacts that a winery might be able to provide, and what kind of backend would this be, right? So breaking it down into the different types of questions. A winery that wants to certify their wine as one of these different certificates, for example, organic, would basically go through a form. This is a form providing text, uploading documents, but also connecting to an API for sensors, for camera data, for different types of information, providing all the information about where this grapes were grown, how the wine was made, and falling into the rules that are existing with organics, right? We've added a few things. We've streamlined a lot of things that are already existing. But this is basically the process that they will do. Now, this is against a token. So because we're tokenizing wine, if we're saying there's 10,250 bottles that were produced of a specific vintage, for example, my wine from 2018, then we would have to certify that token and go through the process that Fede described earlier in a curated token, right? So that's in a nutshell how OpenVino works. I wanted to share one last element that we've added recently, which I think is kind of interesting. And it has to do with one of the processes or one of the issues here, which is our goal obviously is transparency. We want to eliminate the cost for certification for a winery, and we want to provide them more tools to communicate to their customers exactly what they're doing. That's the goal. But there might be certain things that a winery needs to certify that they don't want to make public. And I give an example here of a chemical analysis of wine. So one of the 27 things that we certify as a wine is a chemical analysis. And this has to be done whether it's organic or not. Here in Argentina, I do a chemical analysis of the wine that's submitted to the National Wine Board, and they say, yep, it's good to drink. They don't say if it's organic or not. That's not their role. But this chemical analysis has like how much alcohol and the pH and different aspects, but it also tests things like how many trace amounts of these heavy metals are in wine. Now, you might not know this, but all wines, in fact, almost all food products have some tiny amount of these different components, these different elements, right? It's just unavoidable. It's nothing to, it's not harmful as long as it's with a certain threshold. This is just how chemistry and food works. But the winery might not want to publish and say, hey, by the way, did you know your wine has a tiny amount of lead? So what we've done is, let me get my screen back. We've created a mechanism where the winery, and here in this case we have Bob's Winery, is reporting to the National Wine Board, as they have to do anyway. This is in clear text, and this is a private setup. None of this information is public. They publish their wine analysis to the innovate, to the wine board. From that, we have them, the wine board publishes a hash of this information onto a blockchain. Here we're using ZK Sync, but any public chain would work. They're publishing a hash of those analysis. The next step is they're going to OpenVino, and they're going to publish the same information to us, but we're using a fully homomorphic encryption and a zero knowledge proof, such that the actual data that they send us can be encrypted and hidden. In other words, we don't actually see the information. We only know two things. We know it's below a certain threshold with the zero knowledge proof, and we can also generate a hash and compare it to the wine board's hash and say, well, I don't know what information you sent us. It's acceptable for organic. And if you're lying to us, you also lied to the government regulator, right? And then we can issue the digital certificate. So in a sense, to summarize that, we have this process where we've created this backend for the National Wine Board. A winery would register here. Then they would come to OpenVino, register the same information. They can decide which of these they want to make private that we don't actually see with the fully homomorphic encryption. And after we can compare these two hashes, and this is all completely done on chain, then in the back end, we'll be able to say, is this the same? Okay, this analysis is acceptable. We don't know what the data is. It's below a certain thing, and now we can issue a biodigital certification. So that's how biodigital certification works, adding these different aspects. This is a completely open platform. It's open source, and we're 100% focused on wine, but working with others and use this for, I think there's a lot of use cases. And definitely this fits in with token curation, as Federico described from the beginning. So thanks a lot.
So thank you, Mike. First of all, thank you for making us all want a glass of wine now. And thank you also for being the inspiration. As you said, there are many use cases. One of them surely is in the dairy industry. Let me know. I hope you can see the screen now. Is it visible? Yeah, it's visible. All right. So you're seeing not the presenter mode, right? You're seeing the full presentation, correct? All right. So yeah, as you've said, there are many use cases. One of them for sure is in the dairy industry. It has been greatly inspired basically by OpenVino. And you can see that many things are familiar, not only from a perspective regarding the certification process itself, but also regarding the challenges that we are facing. In this case here in Germany or in Europe, maybe in total, not only in, I mean, you have customers also obviously in Europe. I think I saw someone in Spain, but it's pretty familiar, and we will jump right into the topic. So I've been following Kleros for quite some time now, and as I've said, Mike, you really with OpenVino have been the inspiration for this entire topic. And I started working in the food company roughly 3 years ago. And I noticed that one of the big topics is the difference in quality of the product itself, and the quality that is produced by the farmers, and that is also certified in regard of certain standards that they need to fulfill in order to be bio certified, or whatever kind of certification there is, animal health certification, you name it. I think everyone knows what is meant by that. So the challenges in the dairy industry is basically, on the one hand side, for the consumers and also for the farmers. As you can see on the left hand side, basically what the consumers really want is more transparency. They are, I think, they determine their spending behavior more and more on transparency. They want to know what kind of product they are consuming. They want to know what's the process behind it, how was it made, is it sustainable even. Yeah, they're focusing more on the environmental challenges that we are all facing, and therefore they want to make sure that they are doing their part. And I've seen in the past years that there's a certain shift to more and more, not only from the regulators, but from the customers who drive it on their side also, to a more sustainable and organic approach in the dairy industry, leading to also certain improvements in certifications regarding animal health. And those factors are more and more time consuming also for the farmers, yeah, because with raising limits and raising regulations, they have to spend more and more time also on bureaucracy. And that's really frustrating for them, because they would rather be out in the field, out in the barn, working on the product, working on their daily work. For the farmers themselves, it's also a costly thing, as you've said. It costs quite some, not only time, but also money in order to get certified. It's also pretty exhausting for them. As you said, there are lots of things that they have to answer up front. Usually they get sent a questionnaire containing up to 100 questions that they have to fill in. Most of them also are not really easy to fill in and leave some room for interpretation. But at the end of the day, you could say that the most frustrating thing for them is really having been robbed of the possibility to really work on their product and on their farm, and instead have to do a lot of bureaucracy. So as I'm working for a dairy company that is totally owned, or the ownership is totally on the side of the farmers themselves, I am usually in contact with them and have experienced them complaining about those challenges that they are facing. And therefore, I remembered Mike and his approach and thought this would be also suitable for the dairy industry, and we can jump right in how for example, a self-certification could look on the dairy side. Usually it's like this, and that's for all certification. They have a lot of stuff in common. Basically, it's a focus on the crop that they feed to their animal stock. It's the animal shelter and the environment in total. And what's also commonly used, or common request, is that it has not to be in contact with any genetically engineered food or whatsoever that could be used on the farm. So reaches from food to animals and to soil needs to be in any case clear of genetically engineered stuff in total. And the process itself, of course, there needs to be a list curated. Yeah, we need to stick together, or have partly already done what the requirements are in order to get certified. And the process, as you can see, is basically the same as it is for OpenVino. Yeah, it's a self-certification, meaning that the farmer can supply all of the data that is necessary. Of course, it comes along with the deposits or the process itself. I think I don't need to focus too much on it, as you're all aware of it now, since Mike has talked about it. And I think Federico was talking about it also in the beginning. The process, therefore, is almost aligning accordingly, meaning that it will be checked, yeah, in case everything's fine. there will be a refund regarding the deposit, and the farmer can enjoy his newly acquired certification. In case it does not get approved, the process is a bit different, but let's check first how the farmer can collect the data and distribute it. So especially in the bio-certificated farms, they have been heavily investing in the past 10 to 15 years, meaning that technology is surprisingly up to date. And many of them already work with RFID chips, giving them the opportunity, for example, because this is usually one of the requirements for every certification, that it is proven that, for example, the animal is spending a certain amount of time out roaming on the farmer's land, yeah, and not being locked away in the barn. And they're usually doing this by RFID, so there's a lot of IoT data that they're already collecting. They have the technology for it, so it's no additional work for the farmer himself to put in the data and collect it, and also fulfill then the requirements given in our curated list. The second thing is, in their everyday work, usually they have a smartphone on hand, so they can document photographic evidence, if you will, like, for example, cropping status, cropping plan, what they're working with, which could easily help to get information, like is the cropping plan matching what he's doing out in the field? Yeah, is the barn itself in a certain condition, in a good condition, so that animals will not be harmed, and stuff like that. Really does not really take him additional time, since he has it on hand anyhow. He can work on it any day. It's not then that he has at the end of the year need to get certified and has to put together all the data, costing him lots of time. Yeah. Another sure thing is that he has to supply invoices, for example, or bookkeeping for other certifications that are already in place currently, and he could use that evidence, of course, also for biodigital certification. So simply putting a photograph online, stating that, for example, the feed that he has bought is matching a certain quality standard, and therefore is in accordance with the rules that we have set here. Last thing is that many of them are already using certain sensors, for example, measuring the farmland, the soil and the humidity of the farmland. The data is also collected. In case it is not, there are currently a lot of solutions out on the market that in comparison to what they have invested and what they usually invest, rather on the cheap side. So the collection and distributing data, I think for them is basically, on the one hand side, data that they already have to supply on other sides, for example, income statement regarding to tax, or which is pretty easily done by using their smartphone and simply collecting the data while working on a daily basis. So in case the product is not certified, that's the second way. Once he has entered all the data as described now, it takes the usual step, as Federico has already explained it in the beginning. I really don't think that I have to go into detail here. I think everyone is aware of it in the community. If not, they have seen it now many times in this call. Basically, it's the same thing. It goes to then the Kleros court. The jurors will decide, is the farmer trying to cheat his way into the certification, or did maybe simply a mistake happen, and he, without any malicious thoughts, upload the data that is not matching the certification standard, then this will of course be clarified using Kleros. I don't want to spend much time here. I think everyone's aware of that. So the real use cases that we are currently having, so I'm working together already with a few farmers that I've identified, who I think portray a good average of the farmers that work together with my company, the company I work for. And for them, the comparison is really a game changer, because usually in the traditional way, as I've said already, it's I mean, it's depending on the farm size, but they spend between 3 and 4K euro on a yearly average to get certified or recertified, in addition to minimum 2 days that they have to put in to answer the questionnaire, the bureaucracy, and also show the auditor around on their farm, and that's costing them a lot of nerves and a lot of time. So it's a time-consuming element also. And the last thing is, it's of course, and that's was the most surprising thing for me, not only working in the dairy industry, but also being a customer. The customer really does not have any clue what has been checked, when it has been checked, and by whom it has been checked. So the transparency is basically non-existent. It's, as a customer, you just have to trust that the certification process was working in the way it was intended. But we all know this, of course, does not apply for all farmers, but there's always at least one black sheep. Yeah. And that's, as a customer, I think that's frustrating, because I really want to know, what am I consuming? What am I eating? What am I putting into my body at the end of the day? And the digital version, of course, has room for a lot of improvements for the farmer themselves. I mean, it's a low cost effort for them compared to the traditional way. I mean, in case things turn out well, their invest is basically minimum. Yeah, it's time saving, because on the one hand side, they're collecting data on a daily basis, for example, in a convenient way, like using their smartphone, or uploading data that they would have to use for other stuff, tax calculations, or invoicing or bookkeeping. So that's for them not an additional amount of time that they have to put in. And the last and most, I think, most impressive aspect is the full transparency of the entire process, which I think can be really a competitive advantage today already, and much more in the future, because I think the demand for a transparent process on the customer side is only increasing. At least that's what happened in the past years, and I'm very sure this will continue in the upcoming years. And of course, also, it gives you a certain independence from certification institutes, because on the one hand side, yeah, sure, they are also more or less relying on you as a farmer, because you are their customer and they want to certify you in order for you to return next year and pay basically the same amount again. But you're also, as a farmer, depending on them. Once, for example, you're having problems with your auditor, or in any case are influenced or under pressure from the auditing institute, things turn out quite bad for you as a farmer. And therefore, in this transparent process, for everybody visible, it's much harder to be under pressure or get into a stream where you're basically treated unfair. Yeah. So all in all, I think the transparency is the most valuable asset that we are having in this digital certification process. What challenges are we facing currently, or what are maybe not showstoppers, but are things that we are currently working, or I am currently working on? The initial cost, I think there's not much threat, because they already have heavily invested in technological features in the past years. So that's a green light from my side. What maybe is a bit critical or needs attention is the privacy. I think Mike has shown something similar. He stated that, for example, wineries do not want to publicly display, for example, how much lead is in their product. That's in the dairy industry basically the same. So, for example, let's take a look at animal health. Of course, if someone in your flock, some animal in your flock is having health problems, you do not want to display that to everyone, because at the end of the day, the customer could get a wrong impressions. Like, for example, oh, animal health is not taking serious on that farm, which is in most cases absolutely not the case. But anyhow, this would be sensible data from them, and I think this is really something that they do not want to have publicly displayed. So I'm very curious what Mike has done here, and maybe also have to put in a lot of effort in order to find a solution that, on the one hand side, does not compromise the process, but also gives the farmer a certainty that his data is in good hands. Yeah. And the process itself is also a bit critical, because as I've seen, farmers are very reluctant on new technology and new steps. So the current, let's say, frontrunner cases that I'm currently working on with a lot of farmers is a good way to ensure that we can overcome this obstacle by simply showing them, hey, take a look, we have done the following with your colleagues. They usually they are very well aware of what their colleagues are doing, and they have a great network and communicate a lot. So I'm counting here on mouth-to-mouth propaganda, if you will. Yeah. So if they've seen that it's working for other farmers and that they are actively saving costs, which is a substantial aspect for them, then I'm very positive that we can overcome the reluctance regarding the process and the entire new field of having this blockchain certified, which is certainly something that they have never come across in their professional life. And on the other hand, we have also obstacles to face regarding the customer, so the end customer who will consume the product. On the one hand side, I think the technology, which was formerly maybe a problem for the farmer, I think will be greatly adapted by the broader public in Germany, because there is, as I've stated initially, a big demand for transparency, especially in the food and farming industry. So therefore, for example, simply providing a QR code is already a big benefit for them. And I'm sure that the German broader public, especially on the bio side, will be very keen on seeing how products are certified, and that they can fully transparently see how it was certified, who certified it, and in the entire process, how their product was made. And that gives them usually a great feeling, and therefore I think will drive demand and can really be a competitive advantage. On the other hand, what really is critical, you need to make it commonly known. Yeah. So the popularity is critical, I think. The entire project at the end of the day can only be successful if the popularity hits a certain level, since this is also a crucial argument that is needed in order to convince the farmers that their market really, or their product really has a competitive advantage on the market itself. So what do you expect for the upcoming days and weeks even ahead? So multiple farmers are already interested in it. I've been currently working with 2 of them. 2 others are waiting already, you could say in line. So at the end, at the beginning, I'm spending a lot of time with them collecting the data, as I want the initial cases to be absolutely bulletproof, yeah, in order to show a broader public and also show their farming colleagues that we are doing solid work here, which is not hurting their business, saves time for them, is not as time consuming as they are used to it, really saves cost, and also has a general advantage maybe on the market side or on the marketing side. On the other hand, we are building, of course, a front end to make it as convenient for the farmer as possible, to integrate all the data into the process itself, and also make it happening that it is integrated into the entire Kleros system, you could say. And that's currently what we are working on. I would be very glad if I could give you an update in a few weeks, maybe months even, and let you know how this entire process turned out. So last but not least, I have not introduced myself at the beginning. My name is Dennis. I'm working for, as you have maybe already noticed now, a bigger dairy company in the southwestern part of Germany. And as said, I would be very happy to talk to all of you again in a few weeks.
Perfect. Okay, so hello everyone. I am Fortunato. I'm a product manager at Kleros, and I take care of the curation ecosystem. As Federico introduced earlier, the curation, in few words, the curation ecosystem is a set of tools that we have to verify and validate information through a fully decentralized process, decentralized and transparent process. We optimize this process for on-chain assets, as Federico said, since 2019. And now we are seeing how we are transferring this verification, this decentralized verification for real-world assets. And in this presentation, in the first part, I will explain you a bit how we optimized it with Kleros Scout for vetting on-chain assets, and then I will continue what already Mike and Dennis discussed about how the process itself is applied to real-world assets. So we already have been through this, how a product can be, how an item can be verified or certified. There is a policy with certain requirements. Then a farmer or a wine producer or a team behind the token request to be verified. The decentralized community checks if the submission is compliant with the policy, and then eventually the item can be verified. What I will focus now is what happens once the item is verified. Once the item is verified, it needs to be listed on a platform. And when I talk about platform, it can be really everything. It can be a centralized exchange listing tokens. It can be a e-commerce listing electronic products, listing consumer goods, or even an investment platforms listing traditional finance instruments or real estates. So once the item is verified, we identified 3 main options on how it can be listed. The first one is in a permissionless way. So once the item is verified, it is listed straight on the platform. It's the most decentralized option. Then we have a filtering option where the item is verified on chain, and then the partner can have a internal compliance team that double checks this information. This option is designed for those teams who want to keep the last word on which item they are putting on their platforms, but at the same time, it keeps the transparency and decentralization because the information are still all available. And then another options that we designed is very specific because there are certain fields that require documents to be private, to be anonymous. So we can still have let's say 80% of the verification to be decentralized and on-chain. And then compliance team can focus on asking additional information, maybe some documents that they need to be anonymous even by the law, for example. So in general, the second and the third options that you see here, we designed to help partners to have a larger number of items on their platform without having to invest in huge compliance team. In fact, even Federico at the beginning of the presentation showed how this is a real problem for exchange, that they have too many submissions and they cannot keep up with the request. So I will go through 2 of these examples. The first one is how we mastered the permissionless approach through Kleros Scout, and then later, really quick, we will see how Edfinex handled this the filtering approach. First of all, Kleros Scout is a tool, a fully permissionless and decentralized tool with the goal of providing safe on-chain transaction. So we have a registry with information about token, address tags, which is basically the public name of a contract, and contract domain names, which is matching the smart contract with a domain to ensure the safe transactions. So as I said, this tool is fully decentralized. As Kleros, we don't decide what token can be listed or what not. Everything is decentralized and transparent, and the system is incentivized and powered by reward and bounties. So the cost for adopt such system can start from 0, and then if platform want to invest in having higher rewards, they can autonomously decide if they want to incentivize submission. We at Kleros have some incentive monthly plans to give more to stimulate submissions. So how do we know that this system is working, that Kleros Scout is working? If we look at data in the last year, only 15% of submission has been challenged, and when there has been a challenge, 94% of the time has been won by the challenger. But what does this number mean in real life? This means that most of the items that have been submitted are compliant by the first submission, by the first verification layer. So the community does a great job in reading the policy and posting only the compliant items. But we also have a 14% of the 15% of the cases where some problem is found in these is flagged. Let's say the submission is flagged as there is some problem, and in 94% of the cases, this problem is a real one. So the submission was not compliant with the policy. To give you a more real case parallel with this example, we often see in real courts, in real tribunals, that people sue and go to court for useless reasons, just to have some bounty, to have some compensation, and they sue companies or they sue other people, and they happen to be meaningless because the only reason is to get an economical advantage. But in this case with Kleros, the community is doing a great job to using Kleros Court only when effectively there is a problem in the submission. Further confirmation that this system is proved and is working is by the fact that we are partnering with the main players in the blockchain field. We have MetaMask, Etherscan, and Ledger taking data straight from our registries, even them in a fully permissionless way. If an item, if a token is present on Kleros Scout, you will also see it listed on Etherscan, for example. And this is the exact vision that we have of how this verification should be used, because when a contract, when a token is verified, the final user doesn't necessarily have to go back to Kleros Scout and manually go there and check if the token is compliant. They have their MetaMask interface, the Etherscan interface, and right away they see there that contract is verified. And this significantly simplifies how we handle transaction. And from the partner side, it also increased the retention rate, because that item is verified. I will certainly prefer to interact with a verified items. And even another extremely important point here is it's not just verified. You can check how the item was verified. Now, really briefly, I wanted to show you how we handle the filtering approach with Adfinex. They had a multi-step verification. So at first, let's say they got their token listed to what was the ancestor of Kleros Scout, which was Kleros token curated registries. Then Adfinex wanted a second decentralized filtering, obtaining a badge, which is what Federico explained at the beginning, with more strict rules. For example, they wanted their team to be verified. And in the end, after these two decentralized steps, they also had an internal audit with a drawing mechanism. And at the end, they would list the token on their platforms. Now, this type of this system, this decentralized verification, this decentralized curation brings advantage to all the actors participating, because for the users interacting with verified items, they have safer transactions because the process behind is transparent. So they can decide, okay, I will interact with this contract because it has been verified. If they have to decide between an unverified contract and a verified one, they will certainly go with the verified one. And this also reflects for the partner side, because the verified contract will be on a specific platform. So the partner using this type of decentralized verification will have a higher retention rate. The customer will be more satisfied. Even, in general, as customers, we prefer to interact with platforms that have any type of verification. And still for the partner, it's not just an advantage in terms of competition, but also an advantage in how they handle the verification process, as it can be faster, scalable, and they do not need a huge compliance team to sustain a large amount of submission. And the large amount of submission, handling a large amount of submission also brings a platform to be updated, because both partners and users want to interact with fresh launched products, whatever they are. And nonetheless, also the trustability, because since we can see all the information behind the certification, if there is any fraud, any wrongdoing, we know who is accountable for this process, for this problem. Now, switching to what Mike and Dennis discussed about how we can bring this process to real-world assets. The current status, we have centralized companies issuing certifications. And right now we can only blindly trust their brand. They do most of the work is building their brand as the most trustable certifier. And as a final user, you can just say, okay, I trust this brand. I have no idea how they certified this product. I have no idea what was the process, what kind of data they have. And they issue the certification. And also, as Mike and Dennis suggested, in some cases, it's done just for money. There isn't a proper verification and certification behind. Now, a point that I would like to underline before switching to this slide is that the system that we are suggesting, that we are studying right now, can be also adopted by this company. It's not something exclusive that we say, okay, we are just an exclusive alternative. If they want, they can adopt such system. And the logic behind this is that when you verify an item, even it can be real estate, when you verify an item through a decentralized process, you can, as a user, you can check all the information on chain. And this information, they cannot be changed. You can check when it was built, that specific real estate. You can check all the documentation related to the history, where it is located, the surface of the real estate. You can do your own due diligence. So at this point, it doesn't matter really who is issuing the certification. To some degree, you don't even have to trust Kleros, even if we are extremely trustable. You don't even have to trust Kleros. You say, I want to invest in this real estate development. Let me see who is building it, how this investment was certified. And then you can make your informed decision. So this can be used both in an independent way or even by the players that are already working into the certification field, because you don't have to build a brand. You just have to do your own diligence, check how the product itself was certified, and you can make your decision whether to interact or not with that item. So this was the brief presentation of how the system works.
Thank you, Fortunato. Well, now you have seen how all of these ideas we had in the early days of Kleros in 2019, well, now are turning into actual products that are being used. I mean, this is not like a science fiction. It's not an idea we have about the future. This is something that is being currently used with by Etherscan, by Ledger, by MetaMask. It starts to be used by the food industry in the case of OpenVino, we've seen, and hopefully very soon in the dairy industry. So we already took more time than we expected. So we're not going to do questions, but come to our Telegram group so you can ask questions. I mean, our main goal for hosting this webinar is to start having more people know about this use case of Kleros that not many people know about, and start to have more integrations. If you are in an industry where you could use a certification for whatever you want, I mean, we think we have a way to do it like in a more transparent, faster, and
cheaper way. So cybersecurity, food, aeronautics, you name it. Talk to us, and we will see if this is a good use case for us. Okay. Thank you all for coming, and we will of course share the video about the webinar, so you can also share this with your friends. And and see you in a few months. And hoping we will do another one with all of the progress we've made in this pilots we are running. Thank you guys. See you around.